Okay. So welcome everybody. For those of you just joining, this is Grape to Glass. I'm Mari Coyle, Director of Wine at One Hope. And tonight we are talking about Italy. We're talking about some of the wines that we import from a global perspective and how these make a local impact, which is just really super cool. One of my favorite things that we do is collectively working with winemakers internationally to bring these very best regions to you. So tonight we've got Italy. If you don't know me, I'm Mari, Director of Wine at One Hope, and here we do our Grape to Glass tastings monthly. We also have a Q&A chat, Facebook Live, every Tuesday morning at 10:30. And you can join with your questions, or you can send your questions to wine@viaonehope.com. And I can answer those on Tuesdays. So this recording will be available in Via University along with the slides. If you're just having too much fun and you don't want to take notes, you can come back later. And I'd love to hear from you in the chat box. Thanks, you guys, for already getting this chat box started. Really looking forward to tonight's tasting with all of you. And if you're just joining, you're in the right spot. This is Viva Italia, and we're talking about our Italian wines. So just wanted to talk a little bit first about Italy and what we've got going on here. We've got our Italian Prosecco and Italian Pinot Grigio, both hailing from the northern regions of Italy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight and what makes them so special and why they're such great wines. And you've also got the optional mimosa popcorn pairing. This was really fun. Raise your hand if you have ever had an Orange Julius, or you remember those. Keep it up, because I've got to see through here how many people. I can't see everybody. Brandon, have you had an Orange Julius? I can see you. Anyway, Orange Julius was kind of this orange slushy, but it had this little vanilla note. It was super delicious. It used to be in malls, and I grew up in Washington State, so maybe it was just in Washington State. I think they were in California and maybe around the country too, but this was a really delicious orange beverage. It was like this yummy slushy, kind of like a mimosa. And so that's what inspired this mimosa flavored popcorn, which uses vanilla protein powder and orange juice and orange zest, and really gives you that whole like complex flavor combination, just like I remember from the Orange Julius. And it really pulls out the citrus notes of these wines. So I'm really excited to, hopefully some of you guys are going to be able to pair the wines with the mimosa popcorn tonight too. So just getting started here, I'm going to skip up to this slide showing the Veneto region. So we've got these special wines coming from Italy, and we've sourced them from what's called the Veneto region. And the Veneto region is actually on the eastern side of Italy, somewhat close to Venice. And this northern region is primarily producing Pinot Grigio. That's one of their highest quality white wines, is Pinot Grigio. We also have predominant production of Prosecco, which is produced from the Glera grape. That's what it's called. It grows extremely well in this area and produces these amazing wines, and we're going to talk about Prosecco. And then we also have a white wine called Soave, and a white wine called Collio, and then a red from this area called Valpolicella or Bardolino. So this is a really, really unique region. But what I wanted to point out is that from this region, the two most world-renowned wines that hail from this region are the two that we have tonight, Prosecco and Pinot Grigio. If you've had Italian Pinot Grigio anywhere that was super delicious, it was most likely from the Veneto region. And similarly, if you've had Prosecco, it was from this area too. So I just wanted to point out where we are. If you take a look at this map that we have of Italy, I just kind of want to put you in this place, like, take a deep breath, slow down. I know I've had a busy day. I bet all of you have had even busier days than I have today. Take a deep breath, slow down, and just go on this little adventure with me around the world, over to Italy, where we're talking about this northern region, which is quite cool. The climate is much cooler than in Rome, which is, you know, further on down in this map, much further south and much warmer. We have a cool climate. We have, what else is important to aromatic white grapes? Well, we have a Mediterranean influence, right? We're right here, right by the sea. So we have a Mediterranean influence. We have a cool climate, which we know also produces wines with high acidity. And we've got this perfect region for growing predominantly these white grapes. So let me back up a little bit and talk about our international collection. And we've got here our Côte de Provence from France, from Provence, France. World-renowned rosé region, world-renowned wine, just a world-class wine that we bring here to make a local impact, which is just one of our reserve wines. It makes an amazing impact toward ovarian cancer education and research. And that is so important for us, is to make that local impact. So world-class wine. Then we've got our Prosecco, which you see here. And we've got the Prosecco, which is from Italy. It is also world-class wine. Everybody knows Prosecco. Everyone knows this region in Italy, or we're learning about the region in Italy. And it's just an amazing wine that we bring here and make a local impact. And then we've got our Pinot Grigio from Venezia in the Veneto region. And our new wine, our newest addition to the international collection family, which is our Malbec from the Uco Valley. And we have been tasting wines across the world. We're looking forward to expanding our international collection and these offerings of truly world-class wines. So what I say here is globally sourced wines that make our local impact. Our winemaking team works with international winemakers to produce. I've had a lot of great questions about this. How does this work? How do you have grapes grown in Italy? Are they grown in Italy? And then do we transport them here and ferment them? How does all of this work? So that's what I want to explain to you first and foremost tonight. So what we do is we have our operations team, our winemaking team, and we work with winemakers in these countries to produce the types of wines that we're looking to bring to you. And so that is, I've got, yay, I've been asking those questions. Yay, Gina, there you are. I'm answering this for you. So what we do is we work with these really stellar producers across the world to make wines that really we know you're going to love. And we go straight, first and foremost, to the world-class region. If we want rosé, we're going to go to Provence, because Provence is rosé. It's the most renowned region for rosé. So we go there, and then the next step is to work with a winemaking team that can deliver this wine in a style that suits us as a wine company that can offer something where we can then make our impact. So we actually have conversations, back and forth with those winemaking teams, talking to them about, hey, I'd love to see a little change here. I want to finish up the blend with this. How about this sample? I want to see a different blend. And so that's what our team does. And it sounds like it would be complicated, but just like all of you are joining me here in my kitchen, technology has made it so that it isn't as complicated as it sounds. And we're effectively able to taste each other's wines, and we're able to taste these wines from across the globe to perfect the wine that we bring here, ultimately. So the grapes are grown, in fact, in the region of origin, in this case, in Italy. They are fermented and made in that region using their traditional techniques and also some modern winemaking innovations. And they are bottled in that location. So in that production location of origin, in Italy is where we bottle the Prosecco and the Pinot Grigio. And they are able to put our label by our requirements on the bottle. And then the bottle, the whole case, comes to us in the United States to make our local impact. So that's how it works. These wines are all sourced and made with the best winemakers from around the world. And then they're brought here for us to enjoy. How fun is that? I just love this. So, so tonight we get a little bit of Italian sunshine in the glass, is what I like to call it, because these are really, really, really great wines. And I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. So we are going to go back to this Veneto region really quick. I'm going to just remind you that this is the region of origin. And it's really kind of interesting and not much different or unlike how we talk about our California wines and reserve wines. There's a geographic area that is defined typically by law where you can call those wines Veneto wines. So just like we're able to call wines in California, this is very similar. This is, you know, wines made from the Veneto region of Italy. So it's a geographically defined area. Now, what is different is that typically in some of these old world countries, very traditional countries like Italy and France, we actually see some laws surrounding what can grow in those areas. And for us in California, that's something really hard to wrap our heads around. And for all of us as lovers of wine from different locations, we can't imagine that there's rules in place for what you can grow in what area. But there actually are. And a lot of times there's, you know, several sort of governmental agencies watching over and protecting these regions. And that's really a quality standard in many of these countries where they're very proud of their wine and they want to make sure that the very best wine has that region and that label and the Italian mark on the wine. So it's really important. And it goes beyond just having the geography and the regulations and into the pride of the very best quality. So many of these wines are just incredibly beautiful wines because they're from the region that has been designated to be the best for that type of grape. So I want to point out, I'm going to go a little bit backwards tonight from what you might want to normally do. We're going to start off with the Pinot Grigio, and then we're going to go to the Prosecco. And I wanted to talk about the Pinot Grigio because you do see this della Venezia right here. See that on the bottle? And you might wonder, what is that? And it also in really small print says IGT. Well, what does that mean too? Okay, so these are a couple of things just on the label that oftentimes make it difficult to understand what's in the bottle, and kind of provides that barrier of entry, like, well, I don't even know what that means, so how am I going to know if it's good? So that's what we're here to learn. So I'm jumping all over on my slides because I want to go to some of these definitions for you. So you pick up your bottle of wine and you see this, it's Italy, One Hope, and you see della Venezia. And Stefan would kill me for my Italian accent. I don't claim to have a good one. But what is this? Well, this is a reputable wine region in northern Italy known for producing beautiful white wines, notably Pinot Grigio. So this region is actually part of that Veneto region. What is IGT? IGT is the Indicazione Geografica Tipica. Okay, so what does that mean? It's a geographical wine region in Italy symbolizing quality. So when we talk in California, and we've done this many times on the Grape to Glass, about AVA, American Viticultural Area, and we've used the Matryoshka dolls before to talk about a large area and getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And when we talk about that, we're really saying the same thing here, is this region is known for quality. Its IGT is actually sort of a certification, if you will, from the Italians that says this is quality wine from a quality region. And we know that this is one of the best varietals to come out of the region. So that stuff is really good when you're taking a look at, you know, what should you be looking for on the label and what does this actually say? That is important. We also have a vintage year. So we have a year on the label. And that year on mine is 2016. And that was the year that the grapes were harvested. So because Italy is also part of the Northern Hemisphere, you have to start thinking about Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, because we have harvest at different times of the year. So because Italy is also in the Northern Hemisphere, this wine, these grapes were grown in the fall of 2016. Now, our Malbec, on the other hand, is 2016, but those grapes were actually harvested in the spring of 2016, right? Because that's their harvest season. But it's the same year. So the year is the date that the grapes were harvested, all right? So I wanted to point that out to you, and that kind of takes a look at the front label of our Pinot Grigio. So should we get sipping? I think so. About this time, everybody's like, geez, lady, will you please open some wine so that we can have some fun? All right, so this is super easy. We've talked about the screw cap a little bit here and there, but this is a screw cap wine, which in no way makes a statement about less quality. That is a myth. So we're here to dispel that myth too, that many wines from around the world are now being sealed and closed with screw caps. And it's a winemaker's choice, and it is everything from a very inexpensive bottle to a bottle of $350 Cabernet in Napa Valley. So really the range swings. There are some countries who believe that screw caps are a better closure. If you take a look at New Zealand, you'll find almost exclusively they're using screw caps for all their wines across reds and whites. And we also believe, as innovators in the wine industry, you know, willing to challenge traditions and explore new things, we believe that screw caps can be the ideal closure too for many different wines. And certainly this Pinot Grigio is one reason. So why, as a winemaker, would I say this is a great wine for a screw cap? Well, the screw cap actually allows some oxygen to move in and out like a cork does, but not as much oxygen as a cork does. And it also does prevent the wine from being spoiled by what we call cork taint. So when you go to a restaurant and you order a bottle of wine and you just happen to order it because you're the wine expert in your family now, of course, right? And you order the wine and they pour it for you and you're like, okay, what am I going to do with this? It tastes good. Okay. Well, they just want you to identify if it's corked or if it's bad, which is funny because most wines in a screw cap wouldn't be bad because they're not corked. They don't have a cork. They haven't been spoiled by what we call cork taint. But it's part of the process, and there could be something off about the wine, and that's your one chance to tell the server, I don't want this one, go get a new bottle. And they will. But what is cork taint? Well, cork is a natural product. It actually is part of the bark. It's the cork bark of trees. And because every natural product is susceptible to all kinds of different conditions, one of the possibilities with cork is that it would be susceptible to a chemical called TCA. And that chemical, it just happens to be the right reaction of moisture and a possible chemical in the cork due to processing. Whatever it is, it's the right thing at the right time that causes the wine to taste like a little bit moldy, like a wet dog, people call it. Sometimes people go, I just don't understand. It doesn't taste like the last time I tried it. So maybe it's just not as fruit expressive. And there's varying degrees of this, what we call TCA. Anyway, we'll learn more about that later. But for now, all you need to know is no corked wines with screw caps, which is amazing. That means winemakers have the wine directly to the hands of people who want to enjoy it without having to worry about cork tape. And we also know it's going to be fresh because we've got this screw cap closure for aromatic whites is really a great closure because it allows us to keep and preserve a lot of those aromas that are so beautiful. So let's pour a glass of this Pinot Grigio. I love to talk about what type of glass everybody is using. I am using a stemless white glass. I know you guys see me use this a lot. This is just a small stemless white glass. I think it's from Riedel, and you can get those at Bevmo. You can order them online. Sometimes the Riedel actually costs a little bit more, and you certainly don't want your dog's tails to knock it over. You don't want your kids to be handling them a lot. If you've got a clumsy friend over, you want to keep your Riedels intact. They are a little more fragile, but they're a great glass because they have a nice thin glass to them. They're a really great size. I like the white wine size personally because I don't like anything too big. And they also don't have a big edge around the top. So if you look at your wine glass right now, see if you've got one of those wine glasses that has kind of like a lip on the top. I have some like that too. Sometimes they're giveaways, or sometimes they're just, what you end up having. And it has sort of a lip around it. And I personally just kind of like this more seamlessness. And it actually, in a very fine, sort of slight way, allows the wine to get to your mouth in a more effective way. So it doesn't have to go over that little lip. And people who study this and, create the science around the right glass for the right wine say that makes a difference. But hey, you know what? You can drink this wine out of any glass that you want. I'm here to tell you that. So if you've got a paper cup or a plastic cup or a champagne flute, because you know that we're going to have Prosecco and that's what you like Prosecco out of, whatever it is, I like the little Italian water glasses. You guys know I love those. Or if you've got a full stem and your Pinot Grigio is nice and chilled and you don't want to warm it up with your hands like I'm doing with mine, then you use what you want to use. But for these Italian whites, I just kind of found it suitable to use this glass. And it usually doesn't hang around in my glass too long. They're nice and cool and refreshing. It's Tuesday night. Just kind of want to try these, right? So let's go ahead and taste this wine. So I like making it pretty easy. We're going to swirl and we're going to sip, and we're going to swirl, smell, and sip. Okay, so a lot of times there's like 25 S's that you have to do before you drink your wine. And I just simplify it right down to the three most important ones in my mind, which is swirl, smell, and sip. Now, if you guys were in Philly, I made you do this embarrassing exercise, but it was worthwhile, right? Somebody in the chat box tell me. If you're going to smell the wine, you have to really stick your nose in the glass. You really do. So you can't just like swirl it and then go like way up here and like, yeah, I don't know. I don't smell anything. You really have to get in there and sniff. I mean, that's the point. You want to smell the wine because it smells wonderful and it's part of the whole wine tasting experience. It's if you guys were on Q&A this morning, you know what a big part of the wine tasting experience smelling actually is. It's mostly what you're experiencing. So we're gonna swirl, and you can practice. You're at home or at your friend's house. Hopefully they don't mind if you spill a little on their couch if it jumps out of the glass. But you just wanna practice swirling so that you have a really nice swirl in your glass. And what is that doing? Well, your swirl is actually elevating those aromas so they can jump out of the glass and you can smell them easier. And so then you're gonna go ahead and smell. It smells so good. I mean, is this Italian sunshine or what? I'm not kidding. I was not kidding. I love this wine. It's really floral and a lot of citrus. I love how citrusy it is. Did anybody grow up around like citrus groves where you have that blossom, the citrus blossom that you can smell? It's funny how our sense of smell is really related back to a lot of our own personal experiences. And a lot of times when we take a look at the descriptors on the back of a bottle and we find that we're not familiar with them, it might be because we've actually never smelled that before. It's totally possible that someone has never smelled citrus blossom, in which case it would be difficult for you to actually pick that out of the glass because that isn't your reference point. But that same person might do tons of cooking in their kitchen and be very familiar with their whole spice rack and be able to pick out all kinds of different spices, baking spices. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses in terms of what we can identify, and we just work on it and we just have fun. And if we get really curious, we go out and seek one of those things like lychee. People say lychee. I don't have that much experience with lychee. So I go out and every time I see a jar of lychee fruit, I buy it and I taste it and I kind of get acquainted with it. So that next time when I'm tasting a wine, I go, oh wow, oh yeah, it's kind of like that lychee fruit that I had, if it truly is. So anyway, it's all just based on experience. You don't have to be familiar with any of these aromas, but I think there's a lot of beautiful floral aromas. We can definitely say spring flowers, right? We've all smelled spring flowers. And I love the citrus notes. It just really kind of jumps out as this friendly, delicious wine. So now we can sip. And this is the fun part because, we can only actually taste a few things. Our taste buds, we taste sweet, we taste acidity, and we taste bitterness. And when we're tasting those things, we're not tasting the orange zest, but we kind of are tasting the orange zest, right? So this is part of your whole olfactory system that I was talking about this morning on Facebook, which is that, maybe your taste buds don't actually taste some of these flavors, but when you are smelling the wine and sipping the wine, you continue to use that sense of smell. And that's where you get this combination of textures and truly tastes that you can taste, like the acidity in this wine, mixed with some of those aromatic expressions. And then you might go, wow, this is kind of reminding me of orange zest, right? It's acidic, it's textured, it's really pretty and bright and citrusy. So now's the time if you've got your mimosa popcorn. So when you're doing your food and wine pairings, you want to take a sip of the wine, and then you want to take a bite of the food and another sip of the wine. How did everybody's mimosa popcorn come out? I know there were a couple questions about the orange juice maybe leaving their popcorn soggy. And then somebody had the really good comment that, well, that's okay because that's just like butter. I mean, it gets soggy. And that's true. That's what I found. And then you top it with that vanilla protein powder and it's just super good with a little salt. So Katie says it's delicious. I agree, Katie. I love it. It's just like spring. And I know we're all hoping that spring is just around the corner because it is getting cold, right? It's getting really cold. So this is just a really fun idea if you've got, you know, a host that wants to have a special party this spring, doesn't want to spend a lot of money. Popcorn is super inexpensive. All these ingredients are things that you can find, and it just makes it really fun to try this with the wine. And the Pinot Grigio is a great wine for spring too. So you try a little sip, a little bite of the food, and a little sip of the wine. And what you want to see is in fact this wine tasting better after I had the food? If the wine tastes better after you had the food, it's a great pairing. So did it bring out a flavor in the wine that you went, wow, I didn't notice that before? I hope you guys aren't hearing my dog barking. My dog's going crazy. So outside, I apologize. That's our rescue dog at work right now. So this is just a fun little pairing and a delicious wine. So cheers. I'm gonna go back over here to our descriptors. And I'm just having a mouse difficulty here. 1 second. Okay, guys, just 1 sec here. I want to get back to my descriptors. What else pairs with Pinot Grigio? Well, that's a good question. I mean, I love Pinot Grigio sort of as an aperitif. It's really light and easy. It's great sort of like just, you know, to go out with your friends and have a glass of Pinot Grigio. Bringing Pinot Grigio to a fun summer party. It's lower in alcohol than some other wines. So it's a great wine for, you know, like weekend. Ooh, good idea. Fish tacos is a great idea. I also love it, and you'll see in our seasonal supplement, we had it with some vegetarian dishes. And this is one where if you're really trying to eat healthy or you're vegetarian and you want to have a great salad or something like that, this is a good wine to pair with sort of a lemon vinaigrette. And yeah, it's really good. Okay, guys, sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty here with my screen. There you are. I think my pointer somehow was not happy with me. So, all right, I'll take any more questions real quick before we start with the Prosecco. If anybody has some more questions about Pinot Grigio. Ooh, aged Asiago cheese. That sounds really good. Cheese plates are really good because this wine has a lot of acidity, and it also, so it cuts that cheese, you know, the fattiness of the cheese really well. And then a hard cheese with some salt, you have some salt and acidity. So that's a really good idea. I love that. I like, you know, even a dessert like a lemon bar or something like that is great. Well, my computer just does not seem to want to be working with me right now, so that's okay. We can keep on rocking with Prosecco. All right, so let's go to the Prosecco. Ooh, cheese tortellini pasta dinner tonight, and it's so yummy. Delish. Okay, so we're going to talk about Prosecco, and Prosecco is a fun one because we've all had it before, but we want to learn more. So you know that it is coming from the Glera grape, And you know it's coming from the Veneto region, typically in Italy. And so, sorry, I see a message. My computer is just not, we're just gonna wing it. Here I am. I'm without chat box now. So Prosecco is a really cool wine. If you have followed along with our winemaking process for all of our sparkling wines, you know that we've talked about a little difference between the Charmat method and the méthode champenoise, which is the original traditional method used in France. And Prosecco from Italy is using the Glera grape. We ferment the Glera grape, and then we actually carbonate the wine before it goes to bottle. So we have this kind of a little bit less carbonation than you would typically see in French champagne. And you've got like this light, refreshing kind of bubble to it. And that's what I love about Prosecco. It's very light, it's very refreshing. The bubbles are, the size of the actual bubbles are a little bit bigger. So you've got just this kind of refreshing quality. And you also have just this really kind of a little bit of like an exotic kind of tropical note to it too, because of that, because you don't have the secondary fermentation in the bottle. So you're typically higher in fruit and just really, really fresh. So I wanted to go over opening your sparkling bottles because this can be a little bit crazy at times. I'm sure you've all had one or two experiences with your sparkling wines where you went, okay, what just happened? So what I like to typically do is use a towel. And what I do is I keep the cage on. So I like to take the foil off. I keep what's called this cage on. And then I go ahead and use the cage. I unwind the cage, hold on, and either put a towel over the top or just use my hand, and then I kind of twist. And the cage just allows me to get a little bit, whoa, that was exciting. The cage allows me to get a little bit more of a grip on, so I don't have this like actually going all over my house. So then we can go ahead and pour a little bit. Now you might be asking me, Mari, are you seriously using this same glass? Don't you have to have a champagne flute for sparkling wines and Prosecco? So my answer is no, you don't have to have a sparkling champagne flute. And if you take these wines to a tasting, chances are you haven't had just the exact right glass before. So that's okay. You can really enjoy the sparkling wines out of, you know, just about any glass that suits. So don't even worry about that. So what I love about the process in the Prosecco is, once again, these Italian grapes, the Glera grapes, and we ferment them, and then we go ahead and carbonate them, and we add just a tiny bit of sugar. This is normal in all sparkling wines and champagnes, to bring a little bit of sugar, small amount, back into the blend, because these wines can be very austere, very acidic, and very, very bright without that little, what we call dosage. So we add that back in, and it really rounds out the wine and brings up the tropical notes and just makes the wine so much more expressive. With sparkling wines, you already have a lot of lift in the aromas, right? So you don't have to swirl a sparkling wine. I tend to swirl almost anything that I have in this glass, but you don't have to. So you can just hold the glass and smell, because the bubbles are what's lifting the wine and the aromas out of the glass. So you can go ahead and smell, and once again here, you're really getting this feel for being in the Veneto region. You are just, you know, really experiencing what it's like to have these aromatic, kind of cool climate grapes that are so expressive, and this is almost even just a little bit more tropical in character than the Pinot Grigio. So you can smell the wine, and then we'll go ahead and sip. Here's where Prosecco is so much fun. We all love bubbly drinks, right? It's just like bubbly waters. We love bubbly, what else? Bubbly waters, bubbly wine. You know, now the new like bubbly sodas, people do love soda, beer. We're definitely a culture that loves bubbles, and I certainly am one of those people. And the bubbles actually really play into the flavor and the taste of the wine. So they add this sparkle to the wine that is really part of the character in the wine. And so the size of these bubbles, like I mentioned, from the Charmat method, which is the traditional and typical method in Italy used for Prosecco. And these bubbles are just a little bit bigger, so you get not kind of a creamy texture, but more of a bright, crisp, and playful kind of texture to the wine. Now, try this with the mimosa popcorn. It is like to die for. So take a little sip, take a little bite of your mimosa popcorn. I see some people having the popcorn. So much fun. And then you can imagine actually making a mimosa with the Prosecco. So I love this pairing, again, because it just brings out those citrusy notes. It's that Italian sunshine. I just love it. What else do I like with Prosecco? I like pizza with Prosecco. If you guys have seen our blog, we just did some fun takeout food pairings. So it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be, you know, straight from the farmer to be delicious. You can do everyday things with wine and have everyday pairings, like takeout pizza with Prosecco. It's one of my favorites. So now you'll notice on the Prosecco bottle that it says millesimo. Millesimo. And that's one of these keywords that I have here on the screen right now. And so what does that mean? Well, I had to ask. I did not know what it meant. I hadn't seen that before. And I asked Stefan, and he told me that is vintage. So oftentimes you may find a Prosecco that is not vintage dated, meaning that it's from a variety of different years. The grapes were picked across different years. That's what non-vintage means. And in fact, our dessert wine, our 2912, is non-vintage. We do that because we like to age certain parts of that wine for longer time to deliver the right character and quality in the bottle. So, yeah, so this Prosecco is delicious with all kinds of things. Hey, Doug, I'm wondering if you could read me a couple questions that have come up in the chat box. You can unmute yourself just because my pointer isn't working.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Let's see.
Are there any questions?
It says, where would you place Prosecco in the tasting order at an event?
Ooh, good question. So typically I'm doing all of my bubblies at the beginning of an event. I think that's kind of the traditional way. However, I do like to end with a bubble. I love ending with bubbles. Even after reds, I think it's a really fun way to mix things up and punctuate the end of a tasting. So that's one reason why I opened the Pinot Grigio first tonight, was to just really show you that we so often go to, oh, it's the beginning of a tasting, and we'll have this little greeting wine when people come in, and we always go to bubbles and sparkling, and we almost always recommend that that's where you start a tasting, is with one of our sparkling wines. But You don't have to. And if you have other whites in your tasting lineup, it can be really fun to taste those white wines and then taste the red wines and end with the sparkling wine. So that's just something fun for you to decide and try. But typically and more traditionally, we'll recommend it at the beginning of a tasting.
That's the only question.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to, call out pet adoptions, our two causes on these Italian wines. We've got, our Pinot Grigio goes out to our ASPCA and helping fund pet adoptions, which we all know are so important. And one of the causes that at One Hope, we have a lot of dogs in the different offices, and everyone is just so passionate about keeping these animals and giving them to the right home. And I know I can say that I've loved my little rescue dog too, and I love that this wine goes to the pet adoption. So it's just amazing. Now I see one. I see a fuzzy creature. Steph has one.
Mari, there's a question.
She has her puppy. It's really cute. So cheers to puppies. And then with our Prosecco, of course, our cause partner is Why Hunger. And many of you know that this is just one of my favorite causes that I'm most passionate about. But we have provided nearly 2 million meals now to kids through One Hope who need a meal. And these are kids that when they're out of school, they don't have meals because they have the meals provided by the school, and then they come home and they're hungry. And there's a lot of people that are hungry, I've learned since working at One Hope. And it's not always the people that you would expect. Sometimes it's somebody who just had some hard luck and did everything right and just hasn't been able to find the next meal. So I love food and wine together. I'm passionate about bringing that to you guys, and want to thank all of you.
We have some questions.
Helping us. Yeah. Doug.
Okay. There are two questions. One is, can you recommend any other particular cheeses to go with the Prosecco?
Ooh, the Prosecco. That's a good one. I really like some blue cheeses, actually. It sounds kind of funny, but I think because the Prosecco is so fruit forward, it can be really fun to have with more of an earthy flavor, like a blue. So I love that. I also love goat cheese. Goat cheese just kind of has, again, that little bit of earthiness, but it can be coupled with like one of our One Hope spreads from One Hope Kitchen, and really kind of bring the wine to life and just balance out the cheese. You can also drizzle it with like lemon olive oil or lemon zest and kind of create some flavors in the goat cheese. So I really like a creamy goat cheese. And then, I said I love Prosecco and pizza. I actually love mozzarella with the Prosecco. And mozzarella on its own doesn't have a lot of flavor, but it has a really great texture. And I like that texture with the Prosecco and the texture and size of the bubbles and the just really fruitiness of the wine. So I really like that. And of course, that would be like on a panini or on a margarita pizza or something like that.
Another question is, where would you put the Pinot Grigio in a lineup for a tasting?
Oh, good question. So the Pinot Grigio kind of fits in our wine tasting profile as a light and dry wine. And so I would typically put those wines up in the front of a tasting. So if I was going to start with these two wines, I would either start with the Pinot Grigio and move through other wines and do the Prosecco at the end. It's kind of for the adventurer. Or I would do the Prosecco and then do the Pinot Grigio and any other whites after that.
If you were doing a chocolate and wine pairing, which chocolates would you recommend?
Ooh. For these wines, I wonder is that for these wines?
Yes. Uh-huh.
For these wines, chocolate.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, I probably would have to try kind of like a white chocolate, I think. When I think of the really like fruit expressive wines, I don't think of dark chocolate too much. They have dark chocolate has a lot of tannins in it, which is really great coupled with more tannins. But it would probably overpower these wines where they're really light and expressive. So I think, you know, some kind of like white chocolate, kind of more confectionery, candy-like sweet would be better, or even a cheesecake could be really good. It's really rich, and these wines are lively and have really bright acidity, so they really complement that. Any last questions? All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm sorry that I lost my mouse, but I am so glad that you joined me and learned a little bit more about our international collection and our wines from Italy. These are two great wines that are just perfect for spring. They're both back in stock, which makes everyone so happy. And you've got a new popcorn pairing to share with your hosts now. If you have any further wine questions that you think of, you can email me at wine@viaonehope.com, and I answer those questions every week on Facebook Live. I want to thank all of you for uncorking change with me tonight, tasting through these great wines. I want to remind you to enjoy your wines responsibly and meet me back here next month for another virtual Grape to Glass. Bring your friends, and I'll see all of you in Colorado in Denver this weekend. Cheers.
Thank you, Mari.